and welcome to I Talk Audio, a podcast dedicated to the eye care industries and the trials and tribulations thereof.
I Talk Audio is proudly sponsored by Hogstrite USA. Hogstrite is an industry leader in surgical microscopes. A brilliant fusing of Swiss optics, German engineering, and years of experience allow them to produce surgical microscopes, slit lamps, and ophthalmic diagnostics that exceed ophthalmic surgery needs, and set future standards for optics, engineering, ergonomics, and imaging. Learn how you can work more efficiently and effectively with Hogstrite at hsmicroscopes.com.
My name is Daryl Quinlan. I will be your host for this lovely episode. We have a fantastic guest with us today. Again, my name is Daryl, and I've been working in the ophthalmic industry, helping out with marketing for 7-8 years now. With me today is also Mike Dobkowski, the owner of Glacial Multimedia. Mike, say hi.
Hello, Daryl.
And with us, our fantastic guest, we have a gentleman who's been in the industry for many, many, many years, not trying to make him sound old by any means, but he's got a lot of experience. So we brought him on to kind of talk about today about the things that a lot of the profession faces, in particular, a lot of the practices. He's developed a fantastic company, which he's going to go into and talk about. But without further ado, Ric Tiplady. Hello, sir.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
How are you both today?
Fantastic, man. So
Good.
we're here to talk about, or you're here to talk about today, about the kind of company that you founded, seeing some opportunities in the industry. And so without further ado, why don't you give us just a little bit of background on what that is, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the more details of that.
Okay. Well, my personal background or the background?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start there.
Okay. Well, I think like a lot of people, I do have a lot of years in the industry. I started out as a pharma rep very early on with, some antibiotic drops for the eye, and I kind of moved up the ladder, so to speak, through extended wear soft lenses, worked with ODs and MDs, off to actually operating room devices for eyes, so early phacoemulsification devices, YAG lasers, vitreoretinal equipment, and it kind of ended up being with Alcon, and Alcon then launched me over to be one of the few guys that launched the Vizx excimer laser. And that was there were two lasers, but one of the first two lasers for laser vision correction, or LASIK as it's called now. So I worked with them for a few years. The company split off, and I continued on with Vizx specifically until they were acquired. I then worked with a new entry in the United States market, which was Wavelight, and Wavelight has really become the market leader, since then. And I worked as a vice president of marketing for Wavelight. Did some business development for them. And most recently, employed-wise, I was a vice president of marketing for Vision Care, which is the company that has the implantable miniature telescope, a great device for end-stage or age-related AMD.
Brilliant. Going back and forth with all of these, you obviously made some pretty good relationships with both the doctors as well as folks at the practices that you were dealing with. And kind of knowing those ins and outs of how practices operate, you kind of came up with an idea and said, hey, I think there's something out there that these practices can really benefit from. And from my understanding, that's kind of where the idea originated, and then you reached out to a couple people to kind of get it started. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, back to the excimer laser business, when we were involved with that, it was, I think everybody assumed those excimer lasers, when they were approved, patients were just going to flock to craft
line up at the door, right?
And line up out the door. And essentially that didn't happen. So very quickly, after selling, a doctor or a clinic, a laser for $500,000, and to enjoy the revenue that came from the treatments, we got into practice management, or, in the consumer industry, I guess you'd call that pull-through. How do you get it through that? I think what's important is when we developed those programs, we worked with both MDs and ODs And I had some experience with ODs, as I mentioned earlier, in the contact lens days. And this was the very first part of co-management. Well, I really liked it. We founded a thing called VisX University, which we did a couple times a year, and I was one of the keynote speakers at VisX University. And, we very quickly saw the need for what I'd call non-clinical resources for these practices and things that they weren't doing or needed to do to participate in a patient pay sector versus just the insurance or Medicare business.
And I think that's a crucial part that a lot of people forget about when they start talking about the industry overall. Is it's great to have the latest technology, the best eye drops possible, utilizing the most advanced medications, but quite often the practice side of it doesn't really get talked about in kind of the detail that I think it should. Running a successful practice, having all of the tools at your disposal, including having the right doctors in that practice, not only the techs, but the doctors and the actual staff to run that, becomes an amazingly important part that often gets overlooked.
Yeah, I think, if I was going to make a parallel, it's, be kind of like a claims office for an a car insurance company versus somebody that goes out and sells car insurance. They're really two different things, though they're involved in the same thing.
Right.
And in an ophthalmology and optometry, you're very much used to, especially ophthalmology, is very much used to just, waiting for the patients to come in and say goodbye, and we'll bill your insurance for it. And all of a sudden, when they got into this other self-pay sector, which I believe is going to continue to be there and is going to continue to increase with the changes in medicine that have been proposed, especially, will become even more important.
So, Rick, tell us why or how did you come up with the concept for Eye Physicians Network after all these years of experience being in a lot of these practices, seeing how things functioned? How did you put it all together?
Well, it kind of started out with the idea of I thought about doing some recruitment of ophthalmologists and optometrists. I thought about doing that and explored that for a while, and I basically found that there was kind of a hole in the industry, that it had been done the old traditional way, where you pay about a 10% fee of first year's compensation and place one of those people that's usually paid for by the practice. And it just doesn't work all that well. And most of the quote recruiting firms out there do every specialty out there. They're recruiting everything from family practice people, dermatologists, ophthalmologists, optometrists, etc. So that was the very first idea that I came up with. And as we went to launch it, we said, well, why don't we make it that part of something a little bit bigger? And that's where we came up with the ultimate resource. Non-clinical resource for eye physicians and practice managers. And some of those things are, which is a big part of our area, is a human resources area. We know that practices like companies, big or small, need the resources of human resource people, though most of them can't afford to have a full-time human resource person on board. That usually requires a couple hundred people or more. Then we started looking at, some other things as well. I write a blog every month. My co-conspirator, co-founder, Kelly Murphy, is just beginning to write her blog, and also then a guest blog as well. We've had a couple of those from the industry already.
Super. Well, I noticed on the website, too, you mentioned wellness. That's something that you don't hear people talk about much in the practice environment. What was the ambition there, Rick?
Well, the idea behind wellness was really twofold. Patient wellness and physician wellness. And I'll touch on them really quick. Physician wellness it's a very stressful job, a lot of hours. Physicians have a high rate of depression and suicide. And the idea was to explore that a little bit more, bring it out front, and how to keep your your mental state in check. The other side of it was patient wellness, as I mentioned, and patient wellness was we have kind of an obligation to perhaps look at these patients that come in with eye maladies a little more in depth and perhaps refer them off to the right person versus just saying, well, you should maybe see your internist because your blood pressure is too high.
Right.
Yeah, my little sample thing, just blood pressure, for example, there's a lot of practices that are taking blood pressure now. But there's still an awful lot that don't.
Yeah, and that kind of surprises me. Like the overall concept of wellness in any sort of medical practice, I think is an idea that's starting to catch on more and really should. Just because you're there for a specialty doesn't mean that other parts can't be taken care of as well.
Well, Daryl, it might just be also that and I tell my folks that you might be the only healthcare professional that these people see.
Absolutely.
They just don't see anybody else. And what you say to them about watching weight or cessation of smoking or whatever could be very, very paramount to them because you're the only one that they actually see.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've noticed in the industry as well. I worked in for a practice for a couple of years. And one of the things that I noticed is that often when people go into a specialty, you're absolutely right. It is the only doctor they may have been seen in the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And that's only because there was an issue. And part of it is obviously economic or financial, but also part of it is people just have that mentality that unless there is an issue, I don't really need to go see the doctor. So you're absolutely right. I think that is a crucial part that often gets overlooked.
So we hope to explore that a little bit more as time goes on. I've got an advisor on my board that is tuned into that, and it's a real complex area, and we hope to see it start to develop here pretty soon.
So, iPhysicians, you've taken on quite a bit. You are offering HR solutions. You're offering the resources to help hire doctors or doctors to get themselves hired. You do a little bit of marketing, practice management solutions. You're taking on quite a bit to assist the practices. Was that intentional, or did that just kind of grow over time?
Well, you know what? I think you got a twofold thing. And one is what you want to offer and what people want. And
Sure.
We knew that we would probably, start out with more areas to kind of see what the interest level was, what the web traffic is to the site, the kind of questions that people are asking. We're very active on LinkedIn and the reception to articles and stuff we put out. So I think that will kind of, it will kind of adjust down to areas that are important and areas that aren't necessarily, needed or wanted.
So when the idea kind of started and then you started reaching out to some folks, I know you reached out to Mike to kind of help build that foundation. As we all know, we completely live in a digital age now. Having a foundation for people to visit where the information is available is incredibly crucial. So I know you and Mike worked together to help build that foundation. Talk to me a little bit about those conversations, because that's also a very crucial part, is making sure that the bricks and mortar in the digital world are completely solid, so you can build on in the future.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. And I'd worked with Mike before in another position that I had with a company, so I knew Glacial's background and what they could do, and I sought them out, not just for, hey, I need a website, which I'm sure he hears all the time, but what was it? And Mike challenged me right off the bat with what what are you trying to achieve, and who's your target audience, who's your sub audience, and how are you going to find this out? What other means of promoting it, et cetera, et cetera. So the website's beautiful. We love it. They have done the website for us, and everybody that sees it just thinks it's just great. But there are challenges there. I think I can still remember sitting having dinner with Mike one night. He said, one of the biggest challenges you're going to have is content. And I kind of took that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And very quickly found that content is it's really a bear. You research an awful lot because of the way Google works with original content. You really need to at least refabricate it and make it ideal for your population that you're trying to reach, rather than just quoting et cetera out of things. But, I wrote down the notes. You research, you read, and then you ask for permission. Another challenge is to getting people to submit, and then what they submit. But back to Mike again, Glacial. Fortunately, Mike also told me which I was going to need, and went back to him to get us. He provided me with a writer that works for me part-time, and that writer's just helped immensely with all this stuff.
I think that was a key piece for iPhysicians Network, because most people try to do all that like on their own, save a little money. I think Rick kind of stepped up in this case and was like, all right, I realize that there's going to be no content on this site if I don't get someone to do it. So he, I think that's gone quite well, Rick.
So that would be...
It has.
That's obvious. That's an obvious challenge. Like, you have a great idea, you know that there's a need for it. You start laying that foundation, but then, as you've discovered, because you also offer some marketing assistance to folks on the site, that getting that word out is always not as easy sometimes as you like. So, talk to us a little bit about some of those challenges of trying to get that word out, making sure that people understand the true message of what you're trying to do and the assistance that you're providing.
Well, you're right. That's really a challenge. I mean, I love the quote that, you build a business overnight. Sometimes overnight is 750 days. That it just takes a long, long, long time. And certainly the digital age helps, but then it's a playground that you have to be, precise and spend money on. As far as the individual areas, one of the things that I wanted to do in the very beginning was direct people to people who could get it done versus trying to be the all and get it done myself. And we've actually made even more corrections to that lately, especially with the HR area, for example. So what I like, or what I want, is, like Mike recently wrote a blog. I want people then to be motivated by that blog, or get their interest piqued, and contact a good provider like Glacial, for example, to get that done. I work with Christine LaPointe, who's known pretty well in the industry for practice management. Christine and I have worked together for a long, long, long time. And again, the idea is to have the content there, create the interest via the blog or a podcast, and then basically refer that business off to her or other specialists. Even I keep mentioning coming back to HR, which is a big part, but we obviously can't be the end all for all things that are required for HR.
Right.
It's not as if we can just be an HR, division, and it can, but refer out to HR specialists.
And I think at the end of the day, one of the things that I've always really enjoyed about the industry is that at its core, it really is an industry that is out to help people, not only the patients that are seen, but also the other physicians, the other practices, the industries that get built up around the industry. At its core, everybody just really wants to help and make everybody successful and succeed the best way that they can. So as we kind of wind this down a little bit here, we'll obviously mention the website, which is iPhysiciansNetwork.com, all spelled out, all put together. And feel free to mention that again at the end. But is there anything that you've learned in the past couple of years that you just kind of want to mention out there as a final challenge or encouragement to people that might be listening?
Well, I would say I think it's a lot of work. It's probably a lot more work, and you're tested with things that you haven't been before. I mean, even it seems like simple. Go down and open a bank account, and then they want to know if it's a business account. And once it's a business account, you want the ability to take credit cards. Do you want this protection, et cetera? And you can take almost everything we've been involved with, and it goes much, much deeper. I think it's pretty rewarding. I like writing. I like doing things like this, et cetera. And I really love the industry. I've even done mission work in the industry, which we're going to do a little feature on as time goes by here. I was able to do 4 mission trips and see how iWorld works around the world. In this particular case, it was a third world country, and meet foreign physicians that were there, et cetera. I think we have a little bit of a challenge. We're really some of the first people to combine MD and OD, and I knew I would get challenged with it. I call it iPhysician Network. I knew some people wouldn't be happy with that, but I got to the point I just thought that there's there's so much need. Most busy practices have both MDs and ODs and are looking for each one. So on our career board, for example, we have both MD, OD, and actually practice managers as well. And I think as time goes on, you'll see a transition there. You might see a busy practice. You might see a successful, practice manager from an OD practice going to an MD practice, or vice versa.
Right.
But as time goes on, you mentioned, I have a co-collaborator. It's Kelly Murphy that actually does my HR area. I met Kelly when we were in junior high school, and then I lost contact with her for a long, long time. She's been a big wheel in HR for a long time. Companies like Nike and Microsoft.
And we hope to actually get her on this podcast just to talk about the HR component at some point in the future.
Yeah. So she's been a huge help in helping me, kind of take on and overcome those obstacles. And so maybe that's the last thing I'd say is it really helps to have somebody to partner with.
Absolutely.
It really does, just if nothing for sounding stuff off.
Well, Rick, we cannot thank you enough for taking a little bit of your time today to sit down and talk with us about the good work that you're doing and just about the practices and the industry overall. So I do appreciate it.
Okay, well, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure. Hope we do it again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll have you back on, and we'll talk about the mission work that you've been doing.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and from all of us, have a great day.
iTalk Audio is sponsored by Curious Conversations Marketing. Curious Conversations Marketing believes in the power of story. They help businesses just like yours tell their story in their way with their words. Curious Conversations uses the digital world to tell the story of your business. From the people to the product, let Curious Conversations assist you in telling the story of your business. Focused in the digital realm, from social media, reviews, and reputation management, an overall online presence, to creating, recording, and hosting podcasts just like this one. Learn more at CuriousConversationsMarketing.com.